I am now thrilled to introduce today's speaker, Michele Vollmer. Michele is a clinical professor of law here at Penn State, having graduated from Notre Dame with the highest honors and from Duke Law with honors. See, they didn't even boo you when I said Notre Dame, so that's good. She is the director of the law school's Veterans and Service Members Legal Clinic. Under her supervision, law students advocate for veterans' law changes and help veterans to obtain disability, pension, and education benefits, winning over $1.5 million for their clients. Prior to joining Penn State Law, Michele worked for the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, receiving an award for her work on the Enron investigation. She was a commercial litigation attorney, and Michele is also a board member for the National Law School Veterans Clinic Consortium. Please welcome today's Huddle expert, Michele Vollmer.
Thank you so much.
Have fun.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here today. It's really a great honor for me to be able to talk to you about the work that we're doing at Penn State Law with our students, veterans, and military members. It's especially fitting that I'm here to speak to you during Military Appreciation Week. And I'd just like to say thank you to anyone in the room or with us online who is still serving. We thank you as well for all you've done. So I wanted to start by talking just a little bit more about me. You heard a lot about me, but why is that important for the work that I do with our Penn State Law students? Really, I think it's how the universe works in bringing everything together. So as a litigator and as an enforcement attorney, I also worked in the appellate General Counsel's Office division of the SEC for a few years. What makes it difficult to navigate our system of disability benefits for veterans is the legal structure. It involves many federal statutes and federal regulations. It involves both trial work and appellate work. And I have a diagram a little bit later to show you how that all comes together. But if you think about being a veteran who doesn't have legal experience, it's daunting. And it's also daunting for our law students who are brand new to those legal structures. So it's hats off to the law school that is having this clinical education program to really help our students to get ahead and learning these skills that they will need in practice, but combining it with an outreach to serve a population that so needs our assistance. And that's what I want to do today, is share some of those stories with you so that you can really see the work that's being done. So those are my topics for today, is talk a little bit about our mission, talk about our clients and what we do for them, and talk about our students and just the heart that they have for the military and veteran community. I'd like to start by sharing with you a video prepared by our Alumni Association. This is a student, Rebecca. She is one of two students who started this legal clinic for veterans and service members. She started in 2014 in asking the law school if they would start this clinic. Our clinic is just one of 9 that the law school has that do this same outreach in the community while training law students. So Rebecca will tell you her story and why she got involved. And I joined her. She was actually one of my students. I've been with the university for 12 years. I also teach a number of other classes. One of them is legal writing. So Rebecca was one of my legal writing students as a first-year law student. And she began this clinic as a second-year law student and approached me because she knew that my skills were a good fit. And I'm very fortunate that I was chosen to help lead the clinic as a professor. So here is Rebecca.
I work with rural Californians, but it all started at Penn State. Back in 2012, I saw this massive backlog, over 600,000 veterans, people waiting patiently to get the services that they needed. I knew that I could do something to help, and after 2 years of working hard, we finally opened the Veterans and Service Members Legal Clinic. As a lawyer in rural California, I serve the most needy communities. I'm involved in local government, I'm giving back to my community, and I learned that at Penn State. It's really important for me to stay connected because Penn State is the place that gave me the future that I now have. I want to pay it forward. When I come back to Penn State, I see brightness, I see the future and positivity, and I know that the students here are going to change the world for the better. What I love the most about the Alumni Association is that we're big, but we're individuals. Every person matters in the Alumni Association, and that's an incredible thing. I'm Rebecca Buckley Stein, and I'm powered by pride.
So Rebecca started the clinic with another student that was pictured there when she was standing in the hallway of the Katz building. She was pictured with Justin Bish, who is a Penn State undergrad and then also a Penn State law grad. They joined forces to create the clinic. Justin, at that time, was a first lieutenant in the Pennsylvania National Guard. And he has deployed twice, once during law school and once after law school. He is now an assistant U.S. attorney in Buffalo. And he is hiring Penn State law students for internships and positions there. And that's why I wanted to share a little bit about what Rebecca is doing now, because it's really part of our mission at the clinic is not only to help veterans today, but to really inspire this generation of law students to go out and meet the needs of their communities. So Rebecca is working with the agricultural workers in California and using all of the skills that she learned at the clinic to do so. And Justin is helping in the criminal system. So we inspire the students to take these skills and apply them everywhere, and we hope that they may work in the veterans law field or the military field. We have many students who want to be JAG lawyers who come to Penn State Law, so we can help with all of that training, but mostly we want to inspire them to give back to their communities, and perhaps on a pro bono basis, even if they're working in some other area of the law, they can assist veterans and military members who need legal services. And mostly today I'll talk to you about why they need those legal services. The need that Rebecca and Justin saw at that time has been alleviated somewhat. What they saw at that time was a backlog. And so there has been a modernization. Between 2017, the Congress enacted a statute, and it took about a year for the regulations of the agency to come about and be implemented in 2019. So I'll talk a little bit about those changes. At the time that we started the clinic, there were about 28 other legal clinics across the country. Now there are 60. So there's still a great need, even though they've streamlined the law and tried to decide the cases faster within the agency. There's still a huge volume of veterans that need assistance. I also want to talk about all of the other units at Penn State that are helping veterans and military members and trying to work with the clinic. We have a really nice collaboration. I'll share that with you a little bit later. So just to describe to you what this need is like, how big the Department of Veterans Affairs is, it really has three different units. The Veterans Health Administration, which is all of the health care, the National Cemetery Association that assists veterans with burials, and then the Veterans Benefit Administration, which is the one that my students and I work most closely with. Right now, there are 4.9 million veterans and 432,000 survivors who are receiving benefits. And in addition to that, there are pension benefits for elderly wartime veterans who need assistance with living expenses. So our students help with all of those types of benefits. There's also education benefits, and we sometimes help students to receive those. This is a picture of the VA's system of benefits. And why I wanted to show you that is I thought it was a nice pictorial representation for you of how complicated the system is. So I only want to explain a couple of things to you. Basically, the two dotted line boxes are the agency, and why that's important is it is a non-adversarial system. So what that means is that my students are representing veterans in a system that's supposed to be pro-veteran, where they do not have a lawyer on the other side who is trying to prevent benefits from being administered or given to the veteran. That's not how it works. It's supposed to be very veteran-friendly. Yet it is a large system. Since 2014, the VA has been receiving 1 million claims a year from veterans. So the system still has many claims pending. They've brought the backlog down from 600,000 to 72,000. What they've done is they created the red box. That is the box that's new. The rest of the system has existed for many years. The red box is new. It just means that if a veteran wants to submit new information in an existing claim, then they have a new avenue to go to. What made the system pretty complicated is that in order to be pro-veteran, the system allows veterans to submit evidence at any time in the stage of their claim. And that's pretty unusual in an area of law. Usually in an appellate system, your time to submit new evidence, new documents, or new testimony to support your claim is cut off at the appellate stage. But in our system for veterans, they do not cut it off, and you can submit new evidence. The only time it's cut off is this purple or blue box here down at the bottom. That is a federal appellate court. There is a Penn State alumnus, Judge Margaret Bartley, who is on the Court of Veterans Claims, and she's bringing the court to visit. We're very fortunate. In March of 2020, the court will hold oral argument in the Penn State Law Building. So my students basically act like trial lawyers and appellate lawyers while representing veterans at every level of this system. I also wanted to just touch on the need in Pennsylvania. So we represent veterans that are tied to our Penn State community and also veterans across Pennsylvania and really across the United States as well. We do have many veterans in Pennsylvania and a huge National Guard here in Pennsylvania that we try to assist and reach out to. So just to describe to you what I mean by evidence, I just wanted to put up a slide. On the left is what the veteran needs to prove, and on the right is how the veteran meets the elements or the parts of their claim. So it helps to show you what my students are doing, what they're learning while they're working in the clinic, and it also shows you why it can be very difficult for veterans to navigate the system. First of all, they need to find their current medical records, they need to find their military personnel records, and also sometimes their military medical records. Sometimes they have great difficulty in locating them. They can be lost. There is a national personnel agency that's supposed to keep all of those records, but sometimes they're checked out to another part of the military or to a medical facility somewhere. So we help them to track all those down. They can be quite voluminous and difficult to read. Many of the medical records are in handwriting. So my students have to learn how to navigate those documents. And if you think about your traditional schools, mostly they're learning doctrine, they're learning about the law. So what is nice about clinical education is that they really become hands-on and they look at what happens in the real world and learn how to combine their knowledge of the law with the knowledge of the evidence that they have to use to prove a claim. We also work, and we're fortunate to have Penn State faculty that assist us with talking to physicians and experts, medical experts, to really put together the claims. Now, this is specifically for the disability claims. You might hear a lot in the news about the toxins that our veterans have faced in many different military bases, and in basically every conflict that we've been involved with, there's always been toxins that they are exposed to. It often causes them to develop cancer, usually later in life. And so that's why it can be a real challenge to find those older personnel records and then match them up with the medical science that we know today about cancer and its causes, and bring that together to make the claim. And that's why attorneys and their legal knowledge can be really necessary to make a claim. There are a lot of non-lawyers out there trying to help veterans make claims, and they're doing a great job. But in the highly complex areas where you need this medical evidence, that's where the clinic really tries to step in and meet a need. Just by comparison, I wanted to show you a pension or an education claim. Basically, that medical science drops out, but the students still need the personnel records, and sometimes they have to analyze financial records because you do have to show financial need in order to obtain a pension benefit. And always they're doing some legal research to add to what they're doing. So let me just give you an example of one of our client cases and what the students were able to do. This veteran was from Vietnam, and he was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia in 2009. He was so sick, he is a Penn State professor, and he has permitted me, his name has been in the paper, he's permitted me to talk about his case. He's now a retired emeritus. It took him until 2013 to file his claim because he was so ill. But he is still fighting leukemia. It's still in remission. He has many, many effects. He had a bone marrow transplant, which has caused him to have effects, really physical effects that are long-term for him, especially his vision. Why it's important to show that timeline is under the disability system, he can only start recovering when he files the claim. So our goal when he came to the clinic in 2015 was to make sure that he got paid at least as far back as 2013. That's all we could do under the system. But we talked about everything he had gone through since 2019. We told his entire story. And finally, in 2016 and 17, we were able to achieve first what is called service connection. And this is the other thing that veterans have to go through, is it's often a two-step process for them and can be very frustrating. They first have to achieve service connection to show that link between their current disability and what happened in service. And then they often have another battle to show the percentage of disability that they have. It's called a rating, a disability rating. So it took us another year to achieve a 100% disability for him. And he was able to be paid all the way back to 2013. So that was a major victory for us, and he was very pleased with what we were able to do. And what I wanted to share is just how important his story was, not only to tell the VA to convince them, but also so that he would know that his story was heard. Because what happened, so he was, between 2013 and 2015, he was denied, and he did not have any legal assistance. And he became very frustrated with the system, and he felt like his service was not being acknowledged by the federal government, because even though it's the US Department of Veterans Affairs, it really represents our entire country to that veteran, and they feel rejected. They feel like their service is not valued. So really what my students are doing is talking to the veteran, hearing their story, making them feel valued again, telling them that their service is important and that we do care, and just thoroughly reviewing their claim. And it's really amazing for my students because what they receive back in appreciation from those veterans and military members is 100-fold. I mean, it's inspiring for them and will really stay with them throughout their legal careers. So it's really a win-win. We're helping those veterans and service members to know how important they are. And some of them really, it doesn't matter to them if they actually win their disability claim. They just really want to be heard, and they want to have that service valued. So moving on, I will kind of intersperse the client stories with a little bit more information about the clinic. How are we working with others? So last spring, we partnered with the College of Nursing, and we had a Veterans Outreach Fair so that the nursing students were able to provide health screenings to veterans and military members, and the law students were able to meet with them about their legal issues. We also work closely with the other departments listed here, the College of Medicine, the Clearinghouse for Military Family Readiness, and the Office of Veterans Programs. We often collaborate, compare notes about the work that we're doing, and we're trying to bring a Veterans Summit to Pennsylvania to make sure that we're meeting all of the needs of Pennsylvania veterans. So here's another story for you about another veteran. Now, this veteran was waiting much longer, and this is the story that we hear far more often than the Penn State professor who was fortunate to only be waiting 2 to 7 years, how you look at his timeline. So this veteran was a participant in Edgewood testing in Aberdeen, Maryland. This is back in 1965. The US government was very concerned about chemical warfare, and we had different ethical boundaries back then, and we decided that we needed to test humans with some of our chemical warfare compounds. This veteran received the VX toxin. You might have heard the North Koreans have used that. It can be lethal with just a few drops. It was injected into his bloodstream. Fortunately, he lived, but he did suffer blindness about 4 years later. On his own, he filed claims from 1979 all the way through 2017 when he finally found our clinic. He has been up and down that appellate system and never knew that he had received VX. It was one of my law students. Even I didn't notice the little initials VX in the military file. But one of my students did, immediately recognized it, did the research. A toxicology professor from Penn State came, met with us, went over all of the records and explained the science to us so that we could then also hire another expert and put the case together. We were able to obtain benefits going back to 1995 for him, but we have an appeal where we're trying to seek benefits all the way back to his initial claim of 1979. That has to do a little bit with the system and reopening the appeals. So we're having to prove that all of the evidence was in his file back in 1979. So we're hopeful that that will come back as a victory for him. But that is our biggest victory to date. We won $600,000 in back pay for him. And He made a donation back to the clinic, as did the Vietnam veteran story that I shared, because they're so grateful and they just want to help other veterans. So we use that money to hire experts when we need to prove these very difficult scientific claims. A little bit more about what the students do is outreach. So my students today are over at the BJC for the Military Appreciation Tailgate, meeting with veterans and military members, listening to their stories, telling them about the clinic. This semester, we just started a Military Mondays through the Starbucks National Program, where once a month, my students will be at a Starbucks here in State College to meet with veterans about any legal issue, not just their veterans' disability issues. And our goal, now that I've been doing this since the clinic opened in 2015, I've been able to network with a number of attorneys in our local community, but also within Pennsylvania, working with the Pennsylvania Bar Association on their Wills for Heroes programs and their outreach programs at VA hospitals. I travel and take the students with me to these events. And now I'm very connected with many attorneys, so we feel like we can connect any veteran or military service member with a lawyer for any legal issue that they have. And that really is a huge benefit that we've added to the program, and we really hope to make a difference for our community. I'll share just a couple other stories for you just to highlight what our veterans and service members are going through. So this is a very recent client. Our clients have included not only Penn State professors, employees, spouses of Penn State employees, Penn State students, both undergraduate and law students. This particular veteran is a spouse of a current Penn State employee. He is a Gulf War veteran who also was very, very discouraged. So he served. He's a part of Iron Thunder. He served in 1990 and 1991 and tried to make a claim as a Penn State student in 1994 when he was using his GI Bill, and he was denied. A colonel told him that PTSD did not exist and that Gulf War syndrome did not exist in 1994. Right now, we cannot even find a record that he made a claim. But we will not give up. We are searching to find the personnel records, the VA records. Right now, he has no records of his service, or he was treated for 18 months in 1994. Right now, we have no medical records of those treatments. But we're not giving up. If anything, we are tenacious at the clinic, and we have about 5 different kinds of requests out there to try to find where these records are. He is a combat veteran, so he will have a little bit easier time to make his claim. We will be able to use his lay testimony to prove some of his evidence if we're not able to find it. But his claim will be much stronger if we can find the physical records to back up what happened to him in service. He just found us through that outreach fair with the College of Nursing last spring. He was very, very discouraged, but after he met us and talked to the students, he decided it was time, and he is going to file a PTSD claim and a Gulf War syndrome claim. I'm confident because of the knowledge that we have now today that his claims will be granted, but our goal, of course, is to get him paid all the way back to 1994 to show the true value of his service. Just a little bit more about the national front. So there are 60 clinics across the country that are doing the exact same thing that we do, and I'm a board member of a consortium of those clinics because I want to learn from them and I want them to know what we're doing here at Penn State. It's a very tight-knit community, and we often advocate for change in the legislation. So as a group with our students, we commented on those regulations that I talked about that just went into effect in 2019 to make sure that they were the best they could be to alleviate that backlog. There is also a huge need among our rural veterans. our military members who go back to their home communities, and they're finding that there are fewer and fewer lawyers that are operating in those small rural communities. Most of the legal jobs are in the big cities. So that's another thing that we are working together as a consortium to research the needs of rural veterans and figure out how we can leverage the work of attorneys in cities and have them be assisting rural veterans through pro bono efforts. And that's how us inspiring law students to make pro bono service part of their legal career makes it all come full circle. If we train those students to go out and think about this community, then when they are practicing in a big city, they can reach out to a rural veteran in need. One more timeline to share with you, just because I don't think I can highlight enough the wounds of war from mental health effects and PTSD. So not just finding the records and having PTSD acknowledged as a mental health disease. In addition to that is the proof. So we've come a long way in the Department of Veterans Affairs, but back in 1994, veterans were required to prove exactly what happened in service that was the stressor or the cause of their PTSD. We've come a long way, and we've really made it easier, but there are veterans who have to reach back and try to prove that. So here's another veteran who submitted a claim in the exact same year that our Gulf War veteran did in 1994, even though he's a Vietnam veteran. So it took him a long time he suffered from PTSD that whole time since he served in 1968. But when he put his claim in, he was still denied. And again, it causes anger and frustration with the government. We met this veteran at the military tailgate last fall. And as a result of that work, we inspired him to file a new claim and receive benefits. And we're working very hard to be able to help him recover back to 1994 as well. So one other thing that we do on the national front is that our students have the opportunity to work on what is called an amicus brief. So that is a friend of the court brief. So we are writing as an expert often on the law or on the needs of veterans and its impact, and we file an appellate brief with the U.S. Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims that's going to come to visit next spring, or with a higher federal court, the Federal Circuit, or even the U.S. Supreme Court. We file briefs as experts, and it's really a great opportunity for our students to be able to work on problems that have a bigger impact for all veterans. So here's just a recap of those skills that they're learning. Just a plug for clinical education in general. Really, all of the clinics at Penn State Law are teaching our students how to do these things. And really, it's that personal communication with their client that in the veteran space is so important to make sure that we have shown our recognition and gratitude for their service. But it really applies in every client-lawyer relationship, and it's really nice to be able to help our students to really refine those skills while they're still in law school before they ever have their own client. And then, like I said, we're hoping to inspire them to keep doing this throughout their career. So thank you so much. I hope this was informative for you. I am happy to answer any questions if we're not out of time. Absolutely. Okay, great.
Back here.
Thank you very much for your work. It's terrific. I wanted to know, since we have this brand-new area for veterans that's being set up in one of the refurbished Penn State buildings, are your students going to hang out there sometimes? And will there be like outreach brochures for those veterans to take as they sit there and study or do whatever they're going to do in the new Veterans Center? And I wanted to know, how unusual is this that a university would provide that kind of area for their students? Because this was the first time I had ever heard of it when I read about it last week in, I guess it was the CDT. So that's my question. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Yes, absolutely. So for anyone who doesn't know, we are referring to the Office of Student Veterans Affairs Program. We have a brand new Student Veterans Center in the Rittenhour building that just had their ribbon cutting last night, and I attended. It is a beautiful space for student veterans here at University Park, and really they have the ability to reach veterans across the campus. Yes, the law students will definitely, they were there last night, and they will definitely take advantage of that program. Parts of that building are open 24/7 for them. Yes, there will be brochures, and we do help student veterans. We've been fortunate that most of our student veterans do not have disability issues, but we have helped them with their GI Bill when they're having trouble getting the full benefits of those GI Bills. Great question. I see a lot of other hands. Yes.
So, as you know, Penn State is a statewide system. Only about half the students are at University Park. We have 23 locations. We have 62 county extension offices. I'm curious if you're trying to reach out across the state and provide the same kind of services.
We definitely are. Thank you for that question. So the law students of the university are in 2 locations here in University Park and in Carlisle at Dickinson Law. So it makes it slightly difficult for us to transport those students across the state. One of our goals for the future is to have telecommunication, to have an attorney and possibly one student at our extension offices, meeting with veterans and perhaps televising back to our students in University Park or even in Carlisle, so that there's more educational benefit. The way I'm working across the state right now is through our Pennsylvania Department of Military and Veterans Affairs. So my first connection was with those county veteran officers. I have been to a speaker at several of their trainings, and they have referred cases to our office, their most complex disability claims. So I first did that outreach. We're about 4 years in here, but you're absolutely right. The extension office and getting our students more present across the state is my next goal. So thank you.
Over to Kyle, and then back over here.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I just want to say one thing. I was part of the Southeast Asia War effort many years ago. My 5 closest friends from Vietnam all died from Agent Orange, and my closest friend 2 years ago died. But my point being is that so many of the veterans that left that theater, that came home, were looked at in the lowest terms, as you well know. But I applaud you for now doing the research it takes to go back to some of these people. All 5 of my friends, and there were 4 of them that were PhDs. These were highly educated people, all died and suffered from that disease. And I think you referred to it earlier as far on that research.
Leukemia.
But leukemia, several, they all died from cancer and lung diseases. But again, nobody listened to them. Nobody ever did anything for them. And they spent all thousands of their own dollars to try to help themselves. Got nothing from the VA or the government. And again, I applaud you, and I just wanted to say that because it is time now. We need somebody to take care of some of these people. And they're out there. There were 9,000 people already died from Agent Orange since '65. So, and again, they're out there, and they have a lot of pride, different generation. And they will, and many of them that I've talked to in the past, they just don't want to go up to a Veterans Administration because they were afraid of the outcome.
Right, afraid of being
These
disappointed.
programs that you were talking about hopefully will cure that.
Absolutely.
Thank you again.
Thank you for your comment.
Yeah, doctors are so notorious for their bad handwriting that it seems deliberate. I wonder if you could speak to that.
Well, we have seen handwriting both in the military personnel records and in the doctors' records and the nurses' records. In their defense, I think that they are trying to treat a number of patients, and it can be difficult. Usually, so I'm teaching my students how to draw from context. There's usually one word that we only need to understand. We don't need to understand every word they've written. We can look for those important words. The dates are often printed, but it can be a little bit like detective work to put it all together. Absolutely.
Good morning. I was just wondering, the free legal advice to veterans. The free legal advice that you give to veterans, is that ever based on income or assets that a veteran has?
Great question. No, we are very fortunate to have the support of the university and the law school. We are able to offer all of our services for free from donations and grants and support of the university. And even those expert opinions that I've referred to, we often try to ask the experts to donate their services, and many times they do. If we do have to pay for an expert opinion, we have used the donations or the grant money specifically for that purpose. Unlike some other areas of the law, or for example, if you're familiar with Mid-Penn Legal Services, they do have income restrictions. That's based on their funding. We're fortunate to receive funding from a lot of different sources, and we have no income restrictions whatsoever.
We have time for one more question right here.
We often hear, we always hear, support our troops, support our troops. And what I'm taking away from some of the things you're saying is the very people that should be supporting them are the ones that are they're making them victims again. And I find that very upsetting.
Yes, let me speak to that, because I really don't want to make the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs the villain here. It's comprised of a number of individuals. Many of them are veterans themselves. Sometimes they are bound by the law, and so sometimes we need legal reform. The other part of this, and you see it in every area of the law, is that whenever you have statutes and a large system, right, with 1 million claims a year being processed, and lots of rules and laws that are made by the agency in addition to those Congress laws, and then you have the courts that are settling the ambiguities, it just leads to a lot of process that's being worked through. So I don't want to completely make them the villain, but the word I'm trying to get out is that we have this system, we're doing the best we can to make it a good system, but there's still a lot of work to be done, and they really need the assistance of a lawyer to help navigate that. So we need to get the word out to the legal communities that they need to do what they can to help navigate this system that exists. Anything we can do to improve the system, we are doing. So it's kind of twofold. I don't want to just make them the villain, but you raise a good point.
Please join me in thanking Michele Vollmer.